This is News 8, the Daybreak edition, with Athel, Micka, David Barras, and weather with meteorologist Randy Ollis.
Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, November 4th, Election Day here in Indiana and across the country. We have cloudy skies and 44 degrees in Indianapolis at 6:30. The Election Day forecast coming right up with Randy, and we'll see how the morning rush hour is doing in just a moment. What you are looking at now is a live picture from just one of the hundreds of polling places that opened around the state 30 minutes ago. This one is at the Good Shepherd Methodist Church on the southeast side of Indianapolis. News 8's political analyst Brian Vargas joins us from there live in a few minutes to look at today's races. And David, there are other things going on today.
There are indeed, Athel. Elections aren't the only thing making news. There's also David Jacobson's reunion with his family in West Germany, just getting underway at this hour. And in sports, you had to stay up past midnight to see the outcome of the Chicago-Los Angeles NFL game. It was quite a thriller, and will keep you in suspense just for a while longer.
Well, it's turning out to be a very soggy election day. Randy, is this rain going to be with us all day?
A little damp out there, but I think the rain for the most part is over, so get outside and vote. We have a little bit of rain still showing up on radar. We'll show you that in just a second, but first of all, at the airport, a cloudy sky. Temperature reading not nearly as cold as Monday morning, 44 degrees. Our dew point temperature 42. Relative humidity 93%. We do have a light north wind coming down at 7 miles per hour, and the pressure at 30.14 inches and rising. Weather watch radar, there's our rain we had last night, mainly south of the city now, from Bloomington, Columbus, over to around the Cincinnati area. That rain is spreading almost due eastward about 30-35 miles per hour. So my forecast for central Indiana, mostly cloudy and cool, some scattered showers south of the metropolitan area. And today's high temperature, another cool one climbing up to 51 degrees during the afternoon. Watch out, more rain coming back in later tonight and tomorrow.
Okay, good time now to check on our traffic with WFMS Daybreak Skywatch reporter Mimi Pierce.
And good morning. Another wet drive-in. So far, that's not creating any problems on the interstate system. And as you can see on the map, for Tuesday, November 4th, no major tie-ups. Traffic, however, will be lighter in the downtown area today due to some Election Day closings. Elsewhere, construction progress continues on the north side on Allisonville Road. We've been watching that. And a reminder that that is scheduled to open in a couple of weeks. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Other than that, a quiet morning on our roadways.
And that is good news, Mimi. Thank you. Well, this being Election Day, there are some closings you'll want to know about. Here in Indianapolis, city and county offices, plus the courts and license branches, will be closed today. However, schools are open, mail will be delivered, banks will do their business, and so will federal offices. And libraries are also open, except those places that happen to be polling places today.
Well, speaking of polling places, we kick off our coverage of this year's election by going live to the southeast side of Indianapolis, the Good Shepherd Methodist Church on South Arlington, where voting began a little more than 30 minutes ago. If you do vote today, you'll be choosing candidates for U.S. Senate, the U.S. statewide offices, and local posts. Joining us now to sort things out is News 8's political analyst, Dr. Brian Vargas of IUPUI. Dr. Vargas looks quiet there this morning. Let's talk about turnout. How important is it, and what are we expecting?
Well, turnout is very important, of course, particularly to the Democratic Party in this particular race, because the Republican organization is very strong in this state. So far, there's 3 precincts voting here, and in all 3 cases, they're saying that it's normal but very light. And they don't expect much this early in the morning normally on this side of town. We're here at Warren 12, Warren 28, and 29 on the east side.
Brian, the IUPUI poll came out yesterday concerning several of the races. Let's start with Secretary of State. How close is that race?
Well, that race is essentially a tie statistically. It's no way to tell really with that margin between them in terms of the margin of error. So that one is one that's up for grabs, and will probably depend on the margin that Dan Quayle gets at the top of the ticket for the Republicans.
And speaking of Dan Quayle, we understand that he may have a historic margin of victory in this race.
As near as I can tell, nobody in the history of Indiana statewide races has pulled a 500,000 vote victory over one of their opponents, and he's headed toward that on this day.
And speaking of historic, we can talk about the McIntyre-McCloskey race. Made history last time. What do you see this time?
Well, the bloody 8th is not going to be so bloody this time, I think, David. I think what we're going to see here is McCloskey with a small victory. He's going to pull out. It probably won't be a recount this time. I think that McIntyre's drug charges rebounded against him in that race.
And what about the Enan Jacobs race, an important race to those people here in Indianapolis?
could be some impact there on turnout, particularly in Center Township if residents of that area of the city do not turn out in their typically strong Democratic fashion, but it looks like it will be a fairly easy victory for the incumbent Congressman Andrew Jacobs Jr.
Brian, very quickly, how much influence did negative campaigning have on these races? We've seen it in at least 3 of the 4 races we've just mentioned.
Well, there's a couple places where it certainly, I think, hurt the person who used it, where only one person engaged in it. Particularly, that's the case in the McIntyre-McCloskey race, where people were telling our pollsters that they were switching from McIntyre to McCloskey because of the negative campaigning. Nationwide, however, this has tended to be a real mud-slinging set of elections all over the country. And so probably in most places it kind of evens out, but voters do not like negative campaigning.
Thank you very much, Brian Vargas, and we will be hearing from you throughout the day on News 8 as the election continues.
Thank you, David and Athel.
Thank you. Well, for Indianapolis residents, the Enan-Jacobs congressional race has been perhaps the most publicized since Enan hit the airwaves early with his political messages. Enan, the Republican, was out drumming up support last night at a local bowling alley, and he was predicting victory today.
And the reason is because we've been out doing this every day since 6 months, and 2 years we've been working at it hard. And I believe the American dream's still alive, and that is we can whip the odds if we just work hard enough.
His Democratic opponent, veteran Congressman Andy Jacobs Jr., purchased 30 minutes of airtime on Wishtv, and he showed up with Jill Long, the Senate hopeful, fellow Congressman Phil Sharp, and Evan Bayh, running for Secretary of State.
I would encourage all of you to go to the polls tomorrow and exercise your right to vote, whether you plan to support me or my opponent or someone else.
Jacobs' 30-minute television show has become an election eve tradition, but showing up with the other Democrats is something of a departure.
Of course, while we will be paying the closest attention to the races here in central Indiana, this is an election day for the nation. No one knows that better than President Reagan, who has spent recent days campaigning across the nation for fellow Republican House and Senate candidates. The big question is whether the Democrats can regain control of the Senate for the first time since 1980. As you might expect, they say they can, while the Republicans claim their candidates are picking up steam. News 8 will keep you updated tonight as the returns come in. We'll have reporters and photographers all over Indianapolis and in Evansville for the McIntyre-McCloskey race. And for those contests too close to call by the time you go to bed, results tomorrow on Daybreak.
There is another story today, one with a very happy ending. At this hour in West Germany, David Jacobson, the former American hostage in Lebanon, is being reunited with his family at the U.S. Air Base outside Frankfurt. These pictures of Jacobson's 3 children arriving at the Frankfurt airport were shot just a few hours ago. Jacobson has been undergoing medical tests following 17 months in captivity, and although he appears tired, doctors say he's doing well.
In other news this morning at 6:38, there won't be a new trial for Larry Belmore. The death row inmate's request has been turned down by a Morgan County judge. A jury in Martinsville convicted Belmore of the 1985 murder of Donna Denny, a Morgan County woman. He now awaits the electric chair at the Michigan City Prison. And in northern Indiana and the Chicago area, still another product tampering threat. Authorities have received their 7th letter postmarked in Gary, Indiana, claiming various products have been poisoned. As a result, Jewel and Eagle stores have pulled 32-ounce bottles of Del Monte ketchup from their shelves.
6:39, and if you're in the habit of saving old medicines, it's time that you stopped. Our family doctor will explain why.
And Randy will explain what's going on with the weather. His forecast is next.
6:46, and we have cloudy skies and 44 degrees in Indianapolis. Will there or won't there be a tax increase for the Indianapolis public school system? That's what the State Board of Tax Commissioners is deciding. In a hearing Monday, 2 representatives heard testimony on the proposed tax rate increase of 32 cents per assessed valuation. Some of those people testifying believe it's justified.
If it takes sacrifice on our part as taxpayers, homeowners, then we have to be ready to do it.
But others, such as Carl Multhon, director of the Indianapolis Taxpayers Association, pointed out why the increase shouldn't pass.
I voted better than 2-1. The voters said that they did not want to pay a 65-cent increase. There have been no reasons given why this sentiment of the community should be any different at this time.
The 2 representatives will make their recommendation and pass it along to the full Board of Tax Commissioners for a final determination. David?
It's not money, but curriculum that has the Carnegie Foundation concerned. According to the results of a 2-year study by the foundation, undergraduate colleges are placing too much emphasis on career skills and offering too little exposure in liberal arts. Dr. Ernest Boyer, president of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, believes colleges are faced with conflicting priorities, making it difficult for today's students to receive a well-rounded education.
What we worry about mightily is that colleges are successful in credentialing. That is, in preparing people narrowly to be competent, but less successful in helping them to put their own work in perspective. And I think, frankly, we should be anxious about a culture in which we have a whole range of competent people who aren't inclined to stand back and ask the question, competence to what end?
Boyer says colleges should be able to strike a balance.
Jobs have not been a major issue in this year's election campaign, but the United Auto Workers Union believes it's an issue the American people should forget, jobs or not. The union points out that more than 50,000 manufacturing jobs have been lost in Indiana in the past 5 years. To make its point, the UAW took out full-page ads in Indianapolis papers yesterday. The union says that their concern is not just for union jobs.
Of course, we're concerned about our own industry, but this is broader based. This is total industrial jobs, glass, copper, steel, as well as the auto industry. This affects everyone in all walks of life in the industrial community.
The UAW is currently in a fight to keep some 2,000 jobs at the Delco Ramey plant in Kokomo from being lost to a Mexican manufacturing plant.
The Teamsters Union has ended a 13-week strike in Edinburgh, Indiana. The union pulled its pickets and gave an unconditional offer to return to work. The strike against the David Webb Company, which makes wood veneer, had been marred by violence. The company says workers who weren't involved in the trouble would be put on a preferential hiring list. The company has been operating in recent weeks with replacement workers. More than 100 people in Henry County, an area hit hard by loss of jobs and industry, are back at work today thanks to the opening of a new store. A prototype Hills department store opened yesterday morning in Newcastle. This store will serve as a testing ground to see if it's possible to put similar stores in similar-sized cities.
Any opportunity for new jobs is good news for Indiana's unemployed. That's why Channel 8 tries to put employers and employees together with JobTrack. Here's today's participant.
Hello, I am Ronald Holman. I am seeking a career position in management or professional sales. I have 3 years experience in corporate management and 5 years experience in public sales. My advanced training is in the areas of mechanical maintenance, lay counseling, and insurance. I am a diligent, people-oriented self-starter who enjoys the challenge of accomplishments. I would be a definite asset to your company. Again, my name is Ronald Holman, and I thank you so very much for listening.
For more information, call the Indiana Employment Security Division at 232-JOBS.
It's 6:50, and coming up, we say goodbye to a very familiar voice. And Nancy Reagan says she wants her maid back. We'll have details.
It's 6:52, cloudy and 44 degrees, and in sports, it's likely you were sleeping by the time the Chicago Bears and the Los Angeles Rams finished night game in Chicago this morning, and if you were a Bears fan, it's just as well. The Bears, playing without quarterback Jim McMahon, couldn't pull this one out. In fact, it was the Rams who won it with only 4 seconds left to go in the game. Mike Lansford kicked a 50-yard field goal, and the final score was the Rams 20, the Bears 17. Watch it again. Both the Bears and Rams are now 7-2. Keep in mind, last January, when the Rams and Bears played for the NFC Championship, the Bears won it on a shutout, 25-0. While we're talking Chicago, as Chicagoans awaken this morning and open their copies of the Tribune, they will find an ad from Indiana Lieutenant Governor John Mutz. The ad asked Chicago White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf to consider moving the team to northern Indiana, where a new stadium might be built. Mutz will announce it all at a news conference in Chicago today. What Reinsdorf's reaction might be is impossible to say, but Mutz believes Chicago fans would support the team in this state, similar to the way the New York Giants and New York Jets are supported at their home field in New Jersey. The Pacers play tonight at MSA against the Philadelphia 76ers, and when the Colts take the field against New England in the Dome on Sunday, Coach Rod Dahauer promises a look offense, but he wouldn't elaborate.
A new look offense.
One can only guess.
We'll take it. What do we have to lose at this point? Checking out some people making news. Paul Frees, voice of Boris Badenov on the Bullwinkle cartoon show, and hundreds of other radio and television characters died Sunday at his home at the age of 66. Friends said he had a long history of heart problems. Frees was also the voice of the Pillsbury Doughboy and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Anita Costello, former maid to First Lady Nancy Reagan, has had munitions smuggling charges against her dropped by a federal judge in Richmond, Virginia. Costello has been on administrative leave since her arrest in August, and Mrs. Reagan says she is anxious to have her maid back on the job. One of the nation's most beloved magazines is celebrating half a century of life with a special 416-page issue. Since the middle of the Depression, Life magazine has captured the essence of American life with large photographs and feature articles. 6:54, and when we return, we're going to go back live to the polls to update our election coverage.
Mimi Pierce.
Thanks, Mimi. Recapping our top story now. It's Election Day in Indiana, and you're looking at live pictures of one polling site, Good Shepherd Methodist Church at 2045 South Arlington. Not much activity going on right now, but the polls don't close until 6 o'clock tonight. The latest telephone poll released by IUPUI shows Senator Dan Quayle favored by 63% of those polled, with Jill Long receiving 22%.
And News 8 will bring you live reports of election coverage throughout the day and evening, and CBS News will have results from around the country tonight from 8 to 11 p.m. Also today at noon on News 8, we'll continue our interview with actor Jeremy Irons on his The Mission. The city market continues its 100th birthday celebration today with its own election. Vote for your favorite city market stand. And tomorrow on Daybreak, we'll continue our series of reports from our financial expert, Steve Crowley, on choosing the right clothes for success in the business world. Almost 7 o'clock. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, and don't forget to vote.